Political analyst Mr. Bongani Mahlangu joins us now for a conversation as we take a look at late former Minister of Public Enterprises Pravin Gordhan and the role that he played at SAA and Takatso Consortium. Bongani, great having you with us as always. Good afternoon. So, in light of the passing of the former Minister Gordhan, your reaction to the news and what you then make of the mixed reviews as to how he conducted himself during his tenure, particularly the SAA Takatso deal, or let's call it an agreement of which we're still not privy to the contents thereof, solely because the minister had refused to account or give clarity on various platforms, including Parliament. Could this, you feel, have possibly tainted his legacy as the anti-corruption champion that most have hailed him to be?
Greetings to you in studio and also greetings to the viewers at home. So it's a two-pronged question. The first one, with regards to his legacy, political legacy in particular, is that South Africans tend to look into things in binaries, in extremes. So it's either you are good or you are bad. You're extremely good or you're extremely bad. So in the context of Pravin, historically would have made contributions to the liberation of this country that was good. But then towards the tail end of his tenure as a public servant, there were challenges that would have then tainted and projected him to some people as absolutely bad. So it's important that when we analyze an individual, we analyze them holistically because there's no entirely good person, there's no entirely bad person. But also we must not suppress how people would have experienced an individual. So if some people would have experienced the bad side of you, they should not be suppressed in expressing that. Equally, those that would have experienced the good side of you should be given an opportunity to do the same. So usually we then push people into silence by telling them that you cannot speak ill of the departed. The very same people that use those lines to push people into a corner speak ill of the likes of Terre Blanche, your Hitlers, and other strongmen, dictators, and people who have terrorized communities. So it's when we talk about principle, it has to be applied consistently, regardless of whom we are talking about, the subject. And then when it comes to the Takatso deal, it was quite interesting because even from the statement that was issued at the time by the Department of Public Enterprise, there were two valuations that were conducted. The initial valuation is the valuation that evaluated the business and the assets of South African Airways. And it was found that the business is at zero, if not less than zero, in a negative terrain, whereas the assets at the time were 2-point-something billion rands. And then if you look into the time of the evaluations, the circumstances, economic circumstances, it was locked down due to COVID. So how do you conduct evaluation at that time and think it's a true reflection of what is happening, especially when you talk about an airline, because airlines were grounded, if I'm not mistaken, for 18 months. So they were not profitable, regardless of SAA. So any valuation conducted during that period would have given you numbers that are far from reality. Hence, the removed DG said, the true value of SAA is 7 billion. So when a re-evaluation was done, or the second valuation was done at a later stage, it was found that, and that's what you played in the snippet, that the assets were worth 5.5 billion and the business itself was worth 8 billion. So that would be 6.5. And the removed DG said the value of SAA was 7 billion. So we are pretty much talking about 7 billion, which means that he was correct. And what the minister was telling us at the time was incorrect. Hence, then, the portfolio committee at the time, SCOPA, if I'm not mistaken, had spoken about issuing and instigating an investigation or speaking to the president so he can then launch an investigation using the SIU into how did we get to those valuations and so forth, and going above and beyond just the valuation figures. But to say Takatso was not in the initial list of companies that declared interest, but somehow it was preferred. So what could have happened? Stakeholder engagement or public engagements, those kind of things did not take place. So there were so many gaps. And if you remember, we never really got the report. It was never made public up until this day. So that would have tainted significantly the legacy of Pravin to this day. Hence, some people do not see him as a hero. And remember, also, even the people that would see him as a hero are people that would have been there during the time of UDF. But the younger generations, or Generation Z, your millennials, would not have seen a hero out of him.
Bongani, look, I mean, do you think we'll ever get to know then the context, the contents of what was actually contained within this arrangement? Do we not deserve to know as the public even now as taxpayers? And does this not then set precedents then about other public matters where those that should account can simply say, well, I will not disclose any information regarding my work, or go as far as requesting members of parliament to sign non-disclosure agreements in order to keep us from obtaining the relevant information? Does the Constitution even provide for such? I know there was also a similar issue around the ESCOM financials.
All right, no, thanks. So when we talk about public assets and public funds, public resources, public servants, the public deserves to know. That's just at a principle level. Of course, things have been concealed using legal instruments. We talk about precedents. You mentioned the Takatso deal. You mentioned the ESCOM deal. And remember also at the Department of Higher Education at the time as well, the minister then, Blade Nzimande, also concealed a report from the National Skills Fund. So there's already a precedent of things being hidden and concealed from the public. Also, if you remember, even in the election, some might argue otherwise. In the internal election of the current president now and the monies that were used, even that information, but one would argue that was not state funds or so forth. But by virtue that it's a precedent, the public deserves to know. But it was concealed as well. One of the highest courts in the country. So as far as precedents is concerned, there is already a precedent, it's consistent and it's strong. With regards to the constitutional provision and legal instrument that can be used, clearly, if they've been successful to conceal and using legal instruments to do so, there is provision for those acts to take place. And then no one has challenged it in the Constitutional Court. So that means then even with regards to constitutional mastery or compliance, they are compliant. But at the principle, moral and ethical level, you cannot conceal issues that speak to public assets, public resource, especially if you're a public servant, acting on the best interest of the public to ensure that the public enjoys its democratic dividend. If you are the likes of Pravin, that the public also enjoy their liberation dividend.
Bongani, thank you so much for your input as always. Mr. Bongani Mahlangu, the political analyst on the controversy around the failed Takatso SAA deal.